Welcome back to my channel, Famous and Fabulous. There are historical turning points. Every time when the impossibility becomes genuine when a treasure is discovered. Where anyone had considered looking, it's utterly that was only possible to imagine in the most outrageous of fantasies. But it's currently taking place. Parker Schnabel. The gold made a fearless gold miner famous. Rush just made a fantastic. The first discovery that might be his career's largest out in the middle of nowhere, concealed beneath dust, rust, and years of abandonment trauma, to a gadget that was formerly deemed ineffective, was awaiting the disclosure of its secret. Nobody could have predicted what it contained. Buried beneath layers of dirt within, and the wealth of neglect could alter everything for an incredible $400. The TRL machine used $1 million in gold, in the extraction of gold to sort through the dirt and remove the valuable metal that had been time-forgotten remnants of a mining workers who failed to recognize the worth. It was partially buried under the ground, ignored by each miner that went by for many years. It was believed to be just an additional piece of outdated machinery that has no longer served a purpose. But for Parker, the forgotten machine was more than simply trash, was a fantastic chance with his keen opportunity spotting ability and a relentless Parker's quest to locate the treasure. He saw what others didn't think was possible. Parker's findings within that trauma serves as a reminder of how the world of mining can be unpredictable. The large machinery aren't always the focus, or the sophisticated instruments it concerns, recognizing where to search and possessing the perseverance to look, and occasionally just being fortunate enough to come across something very remarkable. The $400 gold worth millions of dollars wasn't just lying around. On the outside, it was concealed in a manner that nobody would ever believe to check. It required Parker and Highsteam's unwavering quest for gold to find out what was there, awaiting its discovery by the appropriate people. People have been searching the earth for years. For millennia, miners have been searching for gold, battled in difficult circumstances. To some people who try to make it rich succeed, but some people fail. But occasionally, something occurs that makes it all. Parker Schnabel has always been worth it, stretched the bounds of what is feasible in. He has taken risks in mining that others might not always be prepared to exert more effort and continue. But this finding isn't simply because it serves as a reminder of why do people continue to pursue that dream. Have a fantasy about discovering something significant, something of value that has the potential to transform their endures eternally. The trowel was once believed to be left behind and proven to be worthless, be a secret treasure trove of wealth. Since the issue yet stands, how will this discovery alter the future of Parker and his group? This is a pivotal moment for more than simply Parker. However, for those who think that occasionally the greatest treasures are those we don't anticipate finding, the $400 million gold find is a dream realized, but it also acts as a reminder that you should never undervalue what's right below the surface before shattered. Parker had witnessed everything: equipment, abandoned locations, as well as the never-ending search for gold. Yet even he couldn't have predicted his identity, about to reveal the TRL sitting in the middle of nothingness, quietly, was the type of equipment that usually without a pass, miners would stroll by. Second, it appeared worn out and ancient because, to be honest, no one could have guessed that something so apparently little thing could be the secret to a discovery. Has spent $400 million on this for years. Another had left trauma behind. Nobody on the mining crew understood why it was abandoned. Perhaps it malfunctioned. Perhaps the miners' funds, interest, or perhaps they were unable to locate the gold they hoped for, notwithstanding the TRL's motivation for gathering dust and gradually descending into the grounds, though it was simply an additional piece of the hostile environment, forgotten machinery. Parker was unique in the wilderness. His eyes were trained to recognize miners' potential where others failed to recognize it, and this trial was no different. All began with a basic notion, or intuition. Parker and his group had actually been getting through a difficult time of land in an attempt to advance on the gold as usual they had already located. Parker wanted something more. Rumors of something larger had reached him. Regarding the deserted trail, and in spite of condition, that he determined was worthwhile looking into it, without any assurance that anything worthwhile could be found by him, and his group started excavating the old machine as they initially got close to the TRL. The gleaming metal was a disaster. The wheels and belts have now rusted, coated with filth and grime. It appeared to be little, but something Parker became interested in it as he and his team started to thoroughly examine. They saw something on the machine. Oddly, there was a secret section that the aspect of the TRL that didn't look right was a tiny region that has been disregarded by former miners hidden deep in the. Their curiosity was piqued by machinery. Parker and his group made the decision to take a moray closely as they cautiously pried open the container as their initial action. Observe the weight as soon as when the lid was removed. It felt heavier than ought to have been, followed by surprisingly, the box was crammed with gold dust, gold nuggets, and even there were a few gold coins scattered throughout. Buried in the deepest recesses of where no one had, the TRL concealed the path. Believed to examine the finding was nothing less than remarkable, for when nobody spoke, they simply looked at the riches in front of them. Unbelievably, Parker was a professional, swiftly recovered his poise, and started evaluating the discovery. As he examined the gold, his thoughts were racing. This wasn't merely a tiny cache, it was a treasure trove. The quantity of gold they had found was sufficient to make even the most experienced miners double-check their estimates, worth an incredible $400 million. The type of discovery that most individuals only dream of. Parker, in spite of all he experienced, was unable to avoid feeling a jolt of enthusiasm. His intuition had been correct. This trowel was formerly believed to be an abandoned artifact from a previous operation, had been concealing one of the most valuable gold findings of the decade, but the excitement was moderated by. This wasn't simply about pragmatism, it was about removing it after discovering gold. The group was aware of their enormous job. The gold had to be ahead of them. Red was carefully removed, weighed, and taken to a secure area. But that was an issue later. But for now, all they could only savor the time they were in. Become wealthy in a manner that no one had anticipated. That the finding wasn't merely a victory. Parker found it to be a reminder of what is gold mining so exciting? About more than gold and machines, it concerns the quest and the possibility that there might be something amazing out there, waiting for Parker and to be discovered. This was the kind of thing Schnabel and his team needed, of a moment that has the power to alter everything. While the group stood there, observing the view of the weight of the gold-filled TR-lance, the finding started to settle in. Parker broke the silence first with his. The intellect was already processing the further steps for figuring out how to correctly take out the gold and make sure that, carefully handled, he had discovered gold. There was a lot of stuff before, but this was different. This haul wasn't simply another one. This particular discovery was the type that made. The journey was worthwhile because of the sheer. The find's worth was about unfathomable, but Parker was aware that there was still work to be done. We must obtain get out of here gold and figure it out. Precisely what we're observing, Parker spoken in a steady but full of the thrill of what they just experienced, discovered that his crew might be very large. Started taking cautious measures right away, weighing and sorting the gold that they'd revealed each component. Whether it was tiny flake or a big chunk, had Toby taken into consideration. There was no space for errors when handling this type of. While Parker's crew was working, Fortune remained attentive, making sure to, verifying the results again in his thoughts, was already working on the logistics toward turning the gold to a safe place where we're discussing a $400 million find. Here, a member of his crew stated, "He shakes his head in shock that this is going to make all the difference for us." Parker nodded, but his mind wasn't on it. The moment's exhilaration was moderated by the understanding that this significant discovery introduced a new set of difficulties. They would need to exercise caution. The final item they required was for someone to learn about the gold before they had an opportunity to appropriately pack everything up and secure it. "We'll return it to the camp after which we'll determine the true amount of Parker we have. This isn't just another gold order. Discover that we must be astute about this. As the workers meticulously collected the gold, Parker paused to think about the utter uniqueness of what they'd just learned, that gold had been found everywhere, the globe. But the conditions of this discover that the TRL had been for years. Nobody gave it any thought. I thought twice about it, but it was still there, waiting as if it had actually deliberately concealed while awaiting the appropriate miner to arrive and take possession of it. Imagine what Parker said to one of all of his crewmates over the years, simply past this machine without stopping, being aware that it held a fortune. However, we discovered it and recognized the potential. The staff put in hours of non-stop work, putting the gold with care into containers. The overwhelming amount of the trial's finding was stunning. Had enough gold in it to make a change. Throughout the duration of their season as they worked, Parker's ideas started to roam. He was unable to stop thinking about, in the long run, what does this mean? How would this affect his operation? The remaining gold is affected by the discovery. There were far-reaching consequences in the mining world, not only the gold they were transporting. The fact that something exists outside of the TRL so precious had been left behind and abandoned. Behind sparked inquiries regarding the unrealized potential of other overlooked. Parker was curious about the number of sites. Other treasures were waiting, buried. For someone to find them by chance, I've always understood that gold mining was unpredictable, risky, and rewarding. However, this discovery served as a clear reminder that occasionally, luck favors the brave. Okay, let's return this to Camp. Parker shouted when the final piece of gold was packed up, because we have stuff to do. Started the journey to Camp. Parker couldn't resist experiencing a feeling of contentment. This was not simply another. This type of mining operation was the finding that would be discussed for many years, and in the gold industry, there weren't many mining moments like that. These were the occasions that made everything, the lengthy hours and the failures. The never-ending hunt was worthwhile, yet even Parker was aware as they were returning that the actual task was only getting started. Perhaps the gold was discovered, but now they had to handle the practicalities of transforming that discovery into anything that would alter how they operate. For the better, this was only the start of Parker Schnabel's new chapter, and he was prepared to take on his team. Whatever happened next, the thrill didn't endure for a long time before reality sets in. As Parker headed back with his crew to camp with the amount of gold that what they discovered started to dominate their opinions. This wasn't merely the usual discovery. It was a once-in-a-lifetime discovery, and a full fresh set of difficulties that the group was aware they needed to be clever, because they couldn't afford to make any errors when handling a quantity of $400 million worth of gold. There was not the time to be careless. Parker, the stakes were really high, started talking about the upcoming actions, with his group outlining how they would take out the TRL's gold and make sure it is transported safely at all times. Initial calculations had to be made. As they crowded around us, Parker remarked, "No one else can secure this gold. Understand what we discovered until we've appropriately handled it, which indicates that nobody. This team's external partners can observe what we're working with at the moment. We must keep it a secret until we have everything." One of his crew members nodded in place. "In agreement, we'll make certain. Everything is secured, and nobody can close to this until we've resolved." The Parker wasn't only concerned about the following steps. Regarding security, there were additional logistics to take into account. The gold required to be appropriately evaluated, weighed, and they needed to ensure that it was done correctly, extracted and safely stored of loss or damage. Bringing it to the proper investors or buyers would need meticulous preparation as well. There was more to the procedure rather than just locating the gold. They now had to negotiate the intricate globe of gold sales and appropriate "Hey, let's create a safe space." Parker told us at the camp to keep the gold there for the time being, and I'll enter. Contact a few reliable professionals for assistance. I want to make sure we work things out. Everything has been confirmed and documented. Wasn't only about locating the treasure. It needed to make sure everything was above board. Parker was aware that a discovery such as this can draw interest and width. When scrutiny arrived, he wasn't going to jeopardize his operation's image. Due to a straightforward error, everything had to be treated carefully from extraction to conveyance to the ultimate sale as the camp. The crew worked to safeguard the gold. Parker discovered that he was thinking beyond. He was aware of only the current work at hand. This finding would probably alter the future of his mining business. A discovery of this size could offer the financial support he required to grow, invest in new equipment, and take on larger, more ambitious initiatives. It might even attract new business or investors. Colleagues hoping to profit from the gold hurry, but Parker was never one to take the lead. He was aware that there was still a great deal of work to be done, despite the $400 million gold find was an enormous victory. The actual effort was merely initially. He needed to determine how to best utilize this finding to position himself, setting oneself up for future prosperity and making sure it didn't result in needless issues for the time being. However, Parker gave himself permission to feel a little. This was precisely the type of pride that finding that resulted from years of diligence. Value the once abandoned trial and forgotten has contained one of the most finds in the recent past. And everything was because of the keen intuition and commitment of Parker and his group. But Parker never took things for granted. He was aware that gold mining was rife with both positive and negative surprises, and that the turning, this would be the true test. Finding of anything enduring as the team started obtaining the gold and planning the following actions, Parker was unable to stop wondering what other. There were hidden treasures waiting to explore the realm of gold. There were many secrets in mining, and he was more committed than ever to revealing. Parker said, "They're all right, team, as they working to ensure that we did this correctly." Share, this might be the game we've been playing. Waiting. But we must maintain our one stride at a time, head straight. And after then, the team returned to work on the trail might have been deserted for many years. Parker Schnabel, however, and his now, a new chapter, was beginning. Chapter after chapter, that can result in even more significant findings in the future.